August 28th, 1990, a date which everyone who lived in the Chicago area at the time knows all too well. The Joliet Historical Society said that everyone they interviewed can recount where they were and what they did that day, even if they were not directly affected by this disaster. For all people living in the suburban towns of Plainfield, Crest Hill, and Joliet, it was an afternoon of terror, as one of the strongest tornadoes ever recorded, hidden behind a black wall of rain, bore down on them without warning. This is the story of the Plainfield F5 tornado, and how it changed the way we monitor and prepare for severe weather forever. August 28th, 1990 was a brutally hot and muggy day. Temperatures were over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and the dew point was almost 80 degrees. Plainfield High School was set to start classes the very next day. The sky that morning was clear, and the National Weather Service didn't think that much of the weather that day either. Despite the clear sky, the atmosphere was volatile. Convective available potential energy, or CAPE, basically how much heat energy a potential storm will have available to draw from, was over 8,000 joules of energy per kilogram of air. That is one of the highest CAPE values ever recorded. For reference, 4,000 joules of energy per kilogram of air is considered extreme. The National Weather Service recognized this insane level of energy, and that a cold front would be advancing from Wisconsin into northern Illinois that day, and so placed a severe thunderstorm watch over the area at 1:30 p.m. But they believed that tornadic activity would be extremely low. There was hardly any veering wind in the middle levels of the atmosphere, and thus the National Weather Service predicted that the worst threat would be a derecho, which is a line of severe thunderstorms with strong, damaging winds. But soon after the NWS's observation, the mid-level winds began to veer with the breeze from Lake Michigan, and a supercell thunderstorm was born in southern Wisconsin, moving into Illinois at a speed of about 35 miles per hour. Near Rockford, the storm produced a brief, weak EF1 tornado which touched down in Pecatonica at 1:42 p.m. Producing a powerful microburst along its path, the storm continued to barrel southeast, and at about 2:45 p.m. it rolled through DeKalb and Northern Illinois University. The video you are seeing now is from NIU student at the time, Jay Orban. Although the tornado had not yet formed when this video was recorded, you can pretty easily see how the tornado would have been shrouded in rain until it was far too late. At 3:15 p.m., the tornado touched down in Oswego in Kendall County and began doing F1 and F2 damage to the tract southeast of Will County. At about this time, the National Weather Service issued a severe thunderstorm warning, but no tornado warning. The tornado intensified into an F3 as it hit the Wheatland Plains subdivision just outside Plainfield at around 3:20 p.m. Wheatland Plains was almost entirely destroyed, and one child who was injured here would later die. After destroying Wheatland Plains, the tornado rapidly intensified to an F5. It tore entire crops of fully ripe corn from the ground and also pulled up several inches of soil. Dr. Ted Fujita, the man who created the F-scale we use to rate tornadoes, called it the most intense ground scarring he had ever seen. The tornado then crossed Route 30, throwing a 20-ton tractor trailer half a mile from the road, turning the vehicle into nothing more than twisted scrap metal and killing the driver. 3 others were also killed in their cars on Route 30. At about 3:28 p.m., the tornado entered Plainfield proper. The first buildings it struck were the Plainfield High School and the nearby administration building for the school district. As the storm had approached, the football and cheerleader teams had been outside practicing, but were ordered inside. Together, they packed into a hallway, and when the tornado tore through, that hallway was the only part of the school not destroyed. A science teacher and 2 custodians at the high school were killed, as well as the wife of another custodian at the administration building. The tornado then crossed Route 59 and slammed into St. Mary Immaculate Church and School. The steel steeple of the church, once standing high above the rural farm fields of Plainfield and serving as a landmark, was toppled over. The school was torn in half, and the principal, music teacher, and the son of a cook were killed there. As the tornado left Plainfield, it slowly began weakening, but still killed 5 more people in the Lily Cache, Crystal Lawns, and Warwick subdivisions. One of the most famous images of damage in Plainfield, and one of the indicators of F5 damage that Dr. Fujita chose, is a metal dumpster crumpled up and wrapped around the top of a tree, almost completely stripped of bark. Stripping of bark on trees is common in extremely violent tornadoes. As the tornado left Plainfield, it passed to the southwest just a few hundred feet away from the Louis Joliet Mall, which held hundreds of shoppers in it at that time. Even from that short distance, witnesses reported not being able to see anything but a huge black wall. The tornado's next target was the Crest Hill Lakes apartment complex, which it tore into at around 3:38 p.m. Damage here was rated as F3. One apartment building was destroyed, another torn in half. 8 people at the apartments were killed, some bodies being thrown into the cornfield behind the apartments. One boy, who was the sole survivor of a family of 4, later told a reporter, "I was looking out the window at my brother who was coming home from football practice and I thought, man, it's getting dark. Then, boom, I was out in the cornfield." To this day, 29 years later, the foundations where the apartments once stood remain empty. The final significant damage done by the tornado was to 2 steel high-tension electrical wire towers, completely toppling them over and twisting up the metal. These towers were replaced by different designs, and thus they stand out from the rest and serve as another reminder of that horrible day in August. Finally, the tornado lifted at around 3:45 p.m., leaving in its wake 29 people dead, over 350 injured, over $140 million in damages, and a broken community. The Plainfield tornado remains the only F5 to occur in August, and the last of 3 F5s to occur in Illinois. I have heard it said that to this day, splinters of wood remain lodged in trees along the tornado's path. I intend to discover whether this is true when I follow the tornado's path next year as part of the 30th anniversary. During the approximate half hour that the tornado was on the ground, no tornado warning was ever issued. The first and only tornado warning of the day came around 10 minutes after the tornado had lifted. It wasn't like the tornado was hidden on radar. Though Doppler radar as we know it today did not exist yet, the radar that was available clearly showed a pronounced hook echo. But the National Weather Service in Chicago was responsible for all of Illinois and was just utterly overwhelmed that day. A study found that the Chicago National Weather Service only issued warnings in 24% of cases where a warning was needed. The National Weather Service responded by creating additional offices in Romeoville and Lincoln and allowing nearby National Weather Service sites like Paducah, Kentucky, or St. Louis, Missouri to cover portions of Illinois close to them. Plainfield also spawned what is known in the weather and forecasting community today as Plainfield syndrome. In short, it is better to issue too many warnings and be wrong than to not issue a warning that leads to catastrophe. Another good thing to come out of the Plainfield storm is the delivery of Doppler radar to Illinois much earlier than planned. Unlike the previous radar models, Doppler radar is high resolution and can see wind velocities in a storm. The only indicator of a tornado with previous radar was with the presence of a hook echo, which is rain being racked up into rotation. But not all tornadoes have hook echoes. So the Doppler radar was instrumental in finding the velocities, and it can also detect that those velocities are rotating. I was born just under 8 years after the tornado, but my mom and her family grew up in the Joliet area. My grandfather has a VHS tape recording of the news coverage the day after the tornado. I remember first hearing about the tornado back in first grade. My best friend's father lived through it. I'll never forget how he described his side of the street being virtually untouched, while the other side of the street was completely obliterated. Plainfield is probably the storm that got me interested in weather, and the storm that continues to drive my interest to this day. It is just the unique and deadly combination of circumstances and phenomenon that will likely never happen again. On August 28, 1991, 1 year after the tornado, a memorial to the victims and appreciation for the volunteers who helped restore the community was dedicated. Since the tornado, Plainfield's population has exploded. Back in 1990, it was a small farming town of just under 5,000 residents. As of 2017, almost 44,000 people now live in Plainfield. Researchers say that Will County is hit by a violent tornado every 15 years or so, and Plainfield was the last. We are long overdue for another big tornado, but hopefully, with the advances made in technology, despite the population boom, the end result won't be as severe. Nobody who lived in this area in 1990 will ever forget the 30 minutes of hell on earth when a small community was torn apart by an F5 tornado. Today, on this 29th anniversary of the Plainfield tornado, we remember its 29 victims. I just want to say thank you everybody for watching. I hope you learned something about the one of the worst tornadoes in history and the worst tornado to impact this area. It's just such a unique and horrible thing that Mother Nature did on that day in August 1990, and it sticks with everybody in this area forever.